Hello, everybody. This is the What is on the Tabletop podcast. My name is Symbio Joe. You can call me Joe. And my guest today is of a species of man I did not know exist. Hashtag geeks that lived. Introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, it's Rob Bearup, aka Grizzly_Vegeta from Instagram. Hope everyone's alright. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
I'm very glad having you. I appreciate that you share your time with me and, of course, with the listeners. I just said it before. Geeks that lift. You look at your Instagram tells that you have a lot on your plate. You are a bodybuilder. You are a loving father, as far as I can tell, and you are constantly building Warhammer 40k armies. How is your time management?
Well, obviously over the last year, the UK lockdown with the coronavirus pandemics sort of helped the hobby be pushed forward, because really at the same time it's the only thing a lot of us can do within this hobby, and to coincide with the constant lockdowns. But the last 3 years I've worked on the London Underground, working nights, and most of my shifts were based on our ability to get onto the track. Now, if anyone's ever been on the London Underground, obviously a lot of the work happens inside of the tunnels where the trains will run, and that's where 95% of the work I was doing took place. So if we couldn't get onto the track, we didn't work. And we didn't have to get on the track. We couldn't get on the track really till 1 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have to be there till 12:30. So most of the time I was back in bed by 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning at the very latest. So, for the 3 years I've had pretty much all day to myself to then go and train, obviously look after my kids and do some hobby. So I've had a lot of time as well as being able to work. I had a very good job in terms of time for me to utilize, again, like I said, alongside my kids and hobby and training.
So where would you, going some time back, where would you do the cuts? Would you say, okay, I mean, obviously family number one, but then the bodybuilding or the hobby, what gets put on to the back?
I think hobby gets put to the side more so because sometimes I found myself having a massive lull in my how should we say? I can't think of the word right now.
Motivation to
Yes.
paint, to
Yes.
hobby.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it's best to just leave it. Don't force any hobby, because otherwise you'll get bored. You make massive mistakes, and you feel that you're not getting anywhere. You're not making any progression with your hobby. If you keep making mistakes, then you're gonna dislike doing anything because you're not hitting the level you can. So sometimes it's best to take a break. I've taken 2 months off before hobby, and I did not touch a single thing. And then when I come back to it, bang, everything was there, and bright ideas. My painting was still there. I was looking forward to painting as well as building. So yeah, I think the hobby takes, out of all three major things in my life, that takes the biggest sort of setback when I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
Gym, completely different. Even when I'm not feeling it, I still will go and train. I may not train as hard in that particular session. I don't want to be there, but I'm still training. I'm getting the numbers in that I need to, and then the next day or 2 days later when I'm back in the gym, my motivation's back there. So it can be a different kind of mindset as opposed to hobby. And I can just leave and then come back to it, and it's still there. Whereas the gym is really, it's not just about training. With a lot of us who go to gym, it's a massive release for us, to do with our mental health as well.
With such big breaks, do you keep something like a color journal so you can come back to the colors you used 2 months ago, or are you keeping it simple?
I keep it simple with my Imperial Fist that I'm doing at the moment. I'm following the Cult of Paints Imperial Fist tutorial that's on YouTube. I did 3 testers when I was trying out Imperial Fist when I got an airbrush. I got a run of the mill airbrush, no fancy name, nothing big or anything, just quite a cheap run of the mill airbrush. But it served me well over the last year. I've just looked after it. It does the donkey work that I need it to do. So I've got my colours down because I've done it now for a year, and with the cult of paint, it was very simple colours. Step 1, step 2, step 3, etc. I had mine little flare at the end with the chipping, the weathering, and the skin ink that I use from Vallejo to create that muted orange tone that's at the end to create some grime. But I'm terrible at remembering what I've painted sometimes in terms of what colours I use, as you said in your question. And sometimes, most of the time, I end up just winging it. And I always think to myself, I'm going to write down, and I always forget. I'm one of them hobbyists.
Yeah, I do that too, and I remembered that really harshly when someone asked me, "Oh, what kind of color did you use on that model?" And I looked at it and I was like, "Oh no, I mixed that myself. I have no clue how I mixed it." And that's just it. I'm mixed enough to put it in a empty pot, so I can come back to it, but I did not write it down.
Yeah, I made like a green turquoise wash for at the end stage of my goals and stuff to create that verdigris, but I have no idea what colours I actually used to put in it. I think went about through 10 colours, and about 3 different washes that I added into the pot to get the colour I want. And everyone was like, "Oh, what did you use?" And I'm just like, I can't remember.
So you were talking about your Imperial Fists. Now I do too. I just put your very nice dreadnought leg up, if I
Yeah.
can. Yes. How are you doing your weathering?
So my weathering is, I use Winsor Newton oil paints to obviously do all the pin washing
Ah,
initially.
okay.
So I let the first pass, if you will, dry for about 12 hours. If you don't really want to wait that long, put them near a radiator, but I wouldn't recommend messing with the oil too soon. Then maybe 6 hours, and maybe then apply a second thinner pin wash, and I use that to then drag with this spirit that I use to thin it down, the oil to obviously create the grime and streaking. The chipping's done with a sponge, Rhinox hide, and some Vallejo game color black,
Ah,
and a touch of Mornfang brown, and then everything else really is just streaks from streaking grime from Vallejo themselves, as well as AK Interactive, and the Winsor Newton again oils. It's just a build up, and I always find the less is more, because the less you put on, the more effective it will look. And sometimes you can always add. If you add too much on, if you put too much on, sorry, in the beginning, you won't necessarily ruin it, but you won't necessarily get a gradual, nice build stage up of weathering. And obviously, with Imperial Fist being yellow, I actually look at pictures of diggers, construction vehicles,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
because you can look at the wear and tear. Especially diggers when they're going in, the arms are completely battered and bruised and chipped away and stuff. And obviously, if when a hydraulic pipe has burst and it's got oil still left on it, the dirt's going to attach itself to that. So it's little things like that you just make yourself a little bit more aware of where things would be in terms of scratches and chipping. And another thing is, you don't want scratches or chipping to look uniform.
Yeah, gives it a more natural look. I just occasionally messed around with it a little bit, but I never really got it to my liking. I have to try out the sponge, I have to say. And
Yeah.
of course, trying maybe a slower build up if I have the patience for it. Sometimes I'm just, well, why do I say sometimes? Most of the time, I'm getting really impatient at the end when the model comes to an end, and I'm okay, I'm finally done, and then it is really hard for myself to get myself to fix some errors or adding something. And yeah, so far I did not try too much chipping or weathering. I did do it on Nerf guns I painted myself, and it came out great because
Yep.
it's way easier on a on a larger object. And yeah, another topic I want to talk to you about is your gore and grime.
Um,
Because Imperial Fists are not your only army. You also have a 30k army of World Eaters, which I admire a lot. And of course, there is a lot of blood where World Eaters are.
yeah, covered. Yeah, I mean, with blood, I think sometimes you can go too overboard on a model because of the scale, and I wanted my gore to look effective, as in you got a massive chain axe being swung by a super genetically enhanced soldier. It's got the strength to punch through a car, kind of thing, and he literally has a chainsaw in his hand. And I've been very fortunate enough to to live the way I live and chop down trees for quite a number of years in my life. Just to get some wood for the fire and stuff. So I had a basic understanding of how a chainsaw would work and where the direction would go of a said substance, where the chain link is obviously going into. But obviously, chain weapon and slash chain link working around the RPM that a chainsaw would work on, as well as a chain axe, chain sword, will be completely different when you're hitting flesh.
Yes, of
Completely different
course.
substance as opposed to wood. So you wouldn't get a fine sawdust coming out of the bottom of
Oh
the
no!
right there. You get
Something
chunked.
completely different will come out.
So what I tended to do was get an initial splatter pattern with blood for the blood gods, or Tamiya clear red as well, also used. So I had initial layout, and I always use a sponge as well. For me, I think sponging's a very good, random, simple technique that can generate a really good finish and a starting point for weathering or blood splatter. So, and then what I would then do is, as I would then go back over that again with a second, and just as that was drying, I'd add in sand to create essentially bits of gristle, bone, flesh, and then I would paint that black and then go back over with the Tamiya clear red or blood for the blood god from GW, and just create this build up of just viscera and grime, blood and sinew as much as I possibly could without taking away too much from the model itself. Because as I said, too much blood splatter can ruin a model as such. And there were a few models that I painted for my tactical marines, for my world eaters, where I did put it on too much, and I wasn't happy with it. But because I just wanted to get them done, because I wanted that sea of marines just charging at my enemies, I just kind of ignored it and said to myself, I'll come back to it, and I never did. But I will be doing my world eaters again. So I had to sell majority of my infantry because at the time, obviously the corona, financially, I was absolutely crippled. I needed a big influx of cash. So I had to sell quite a lot of my world eaters, but I will be doing them again because I'm much more confident now with the airbrush, and I've actually made a list up where I've got 40 assault marines fully armed to the teeth. For I think I made a 3K list, and I've got
Okay.
40 assault marines in it, all rocking combat shields, power swords, melter bombs, jump packs, led by a chaplain each, and just charging forward and see what happens.
Yeah, the topic of blood on weapons or on models is always a learning point for newcomers because they are always overdoing it. And I haven't seen one yet that does not overdo it. Maybe because most of the time it is uh, children, young adults who just think, oh yes, I need blood on my weapons, it will look cool, and then they just slap it on, and it just looks like someone threw a big pot of red paint against the weapon, and it does not look like grime and splatter at all. And I think your method to slowly build it up is a really good, simple method to achieve that. You said you use sand. What sand? Because
It's it's
it
the
does not look like regular sand to me.
it's the basin sand from GW.
Ah,
Um, yeah, I bought quite a few in my illustrious hobby life that I've ended up buying, not using, putting them somewhere, forgetting I've got them, then thinking, oh, I need some basin sand, bought another pot, and then in the end, I've ended up with like 9 pots dotted around my hobby space. So I've had plenty of material to use. And you brought up a very good point actually with newcomers, and it is nothing against them,
no, it's
but
just they are
any
starting out and they are making, well, start out mistakes. I did that. Oh my god, I had some terrible blobs on the talons of my gene stealers. It did not look at all like blood.
yeah, a word of advice. I'm definitely not an expert painter. I'll never claim to be. I just understand how, I took the time to understand how certain materials and paint will look on models for the scale. Never, ever, ever use, for anyone who's listening, red paint for blood. It just doesn't work. It's too matte. You have a tidal mark where obviously the paint will dry and where the paint has stopped initially on the surface you've used. Always use a clear red and purples and blues, and even browns and blacks. Add them in because as blood dries, as we know, it clogs, it gets thicker, it gets harder, it scabs. It goes through certain color changes. Obviously, when it comes out, it's red, or not everyone's blood is red. I understand this, so that's why you start adding in different tonal methods. A really dark brown, black, purple, a touch of blue. It just adds that different essence of blood and how fresh it is. Throw on some gloss as well on top if you want it to look more fresh. Don't add in browns or blacks if you want it to look like fresh bloods. Little things like that. And I always say to people, if you're not too sure, just get a torso or a set of legs, or a torso and legs glued together, and just practice a bit of blood splat on how you think it would hit the user of the said weapon, and paint up some chain axes, some chain swords, and then just practice blood still on the weapon itself. And this is what a lot of people don't tend to hear, I think, in a hobby. Just practice on, an arm, a leg, torso, as I said. And people that want to paint flesh tones, obviously, on heads, just keep practicing. The amount of kits everyone ends up buying, and there's always loads of bare heads you get to use. And it's always a practice. You don't have to practice on a full model. If there's one element that you want to learn, then go to the root of it. So if you want to do blood splat, as we're talking about it, like I said, get a chainsaw, chain axe, and practice. Paint the weapon up as you would usually, and then start adding in the blood splatter on the weapon. Like I use sand to add chunks, and just keep practicing. Have about 4 or 5 lined up, and just practice different methods. And then you end up, what ends up happening is you find your flow, and then you find where you want to take it as a hobby, as a hobbyist. Sorry.
Yeah. Just to stay on the topic of the World Eaters,
Mhm.
I'm not that much into 30k. I would go so far to say that I'm not at all into 30k. The first Chaos model that made a big impression on me was Khan the Betrayer,
Mhm.
because he was the guy who had no armor on his arm and was in this really, well, characteristic to only him pose, the risen chain axe, the chains with the skulls on it. And later I played Chaos, but I could not get really to the World Eaters, although I like the demons a lot, they always appear to me as a little too boring, because it was only, oh, we are very angry and we kill everything in our sight, which is, to be honest, not that different from all the other Space Marine chapters. And 30K is a whole other beast in that way, that, well, you see where it all started. So as someone like me who is completely oblivious to the fine character differences of the mad superhuman killers that are the World Eaters, how would you pitch to me to get more into the Sons of Angron, or examples that will swipe away my bias?
Well, but I'll start with what drew me to them, because I never was a 30K fanatic, shall we say, in the beginning. I started out with 40K initially, as everyone would and does. But what drew me to the World Eaters more than anything was my love and constant hours of reading up on Roman gladiatorial games history. And obviously that's exactly what the World Eaters are based on and after. And Angron is essentially Spartacus. And obviously I loved the show that was on TV a couple of years ago. Absolutely loved it. I rewatch it probably once a year. And I absolutely fall in love with it every time I watch it. And then 30K comes out, and I was instantly drawn to the World Eaters. I was actually at the game day where they released Book 1, Betrayal, where Alan Bly was obviously signing the books and doing talks and stuff. And it took me about 5 years from that initial day to really step into the 30K scene. Now, one of the big reasons why I stepped into 30K was 40K, for me personally, being killed by 8th edition. That's a completely different subject, but that was one of the main reasons why I stepped into the 30K scene. Had a massive history lore, because essentially you're playing an historical event in a sci-fi setting. And the World Eaters I was drawn to straight away, as I said, from my love for the gladiatorial games in during the Roman Empire and stuff like that, and Spartacus, the TV show. But the World Eaters have a massive fall from grace, because when they originally started out, when obviously the Emperor left the Sol system with the legions and then started finding the Primarchs, etc., they were called the Warhounds, and their scheme was reversed. So they had blue bodies, white shoulder pads, and white backpacks, and there was these Warhounds, and there was these shock troops essentially. Now there's a book, Angron's book, which is the Sounds of Nuceria or Blood of Nuceria. One of the two. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should really know this. That's shame on me. And it shows the world. It shows the World Eaters that they've just become the World Eaters. I think they've been the World Eaters now for about a year or two, and there's still half the Legion that are the old Warhounds, and they still retain their old Legion combat doctrine, and they still have a very Roman-esque feel to them. And it tells a story of the butchers now as being created because of obviously them being employed into Angron. Now, he has a massive tragic story. When you start picking it apart properly, all Angron ever wanted to do was die with his rebellion. That's all he ever wanted to do. And obviously, as we all know, the Emperor beamed him up the night before the battle, and all of his brothers and sisters in rebellion just got slaughtered, and he had to witness that from space. And that's why he hated the Emperor. So Emperor's only got himself to blame, really, to why Angron turned on him.
He's not the best father at all.
Oh, no. The Emperor... I know, obviously, I'm loyalist with the Imperial Fist and stuff, but the Emperor has been a complete douche to all of his Primarch sons, and he's shown favoritism with certain ones and stuff, and that's really what pushed Angron to turn more than anything, because the Emperor had helped a lot of the others but wouldn't help Angron. And I'm a firm believer if the Emperor had beamed himself down with the Custodes and fought alongside Angron to kill the Overriders and the Lords and the Slavers of Nuceria, I firmly believe the story would have been different for Angron. Because in the end, he saw the Emperor as exactly what he was fighting against anyway. And obviously then Lorga tricks him into a ritual, which then he ascends into demonhood and becomes the massive corn demon that we now see in the later stage of the heresy novels. But concerning the Legion as a whole, they're on the brink all the time. They have this massive sense of brotherhood, and you really see that with the books, especially in Betrayer. You know, there's scenes of, you know, they're clasping each other's hands before battle. They're headbutting each other in like a brotherhood laughter thing. Exactly what you see in the TV series of Spartacus. So it's a really nice touch. Certain things like that where the authors have probably seen, you know, the TV show and gone, right, taking that, putting that in, and it shows this massive bond of brotherhood, the pit fighting, you know, only the strongest survive, which again is a gladiatorial feel. Only the strong survive, but they're tinkering on the edge because they've all got the nails hammered into their head, and they will just completely forget any sense of brotherhood, any sense of cohesion as a legion. And as you see in Betrayer, which is a fantastic book, they just charge and they completely forget what they're doing, and Khan ends up somewhere in the battlefield and he doesn't even know how he got there because he's blacked out because of the nails. And then they carry a lot of shame because of that, because they're so ingrained into themselves and into their squads and into their brothers in the sense of the brotherhood, that they have a lot of shame within themselves, that they lose that control when they forget about it because all they want to do is kill.
Seems
and it really drew me to them. Their sense of brotherhood, that's what really drew me to the World Eaters.
Seems a bit like the story of an addict. Like, well, they
Yes,
are not
yeah.
they are not seeking out well, to be mindless berserkers, so to say, but they are just, well, this is what it. Oh my, this is way more sad than I expected it to be.
And the thing is, the Legion actually broke itself to make Angron essentially love them as a father, obviously as the Primarch of the World Eaters and you know, their Gene Father. They saw how powerful he was in combat because of the nails, and that's what they wanted. And because he shunned them for such a long time, they broke themselves to make him like. But he still hated them. But he hated them because he hated himself. So there's this massive circle with the World Eaters and their story, and you know, the more and more involved you get with it, the more you understand, and like I said, you can start picking all the real finer parts apart and understanding why essentially they have really, aside from really the Emperor's Children, they have such a massive fall from grace. Because even though there was always the shock troopers, the hard hitting Legion, their whole makeup was brotherhood. And Angron, before he had the nails put into him, he had a psychic ability to feel others' pain and take it away from them. And he was the Primarch made for brotherhood. Angron was meant to be the glue for all of the Primarchs to stay as brothers.
Oh, okay.
But because of the nails, that went out the window.
Yeah, that, well, oh boy, that did, whoa, oh my, the more I think about it, the more tragic it becomes. Very, very dark stuff.
And 30k really has really been able to keep that grim, dark, gritty, gothic feel that I think 40k has lost. I know it's a completely different story, but in terms of why I was so drawn to 30k, because for me it still has that real gritty, almost adult scene. You know, nothing sugar coated. You know, when you read some of the Horus Heresy novels, a lot of it isn't sugar coated. You know, you've only got to read certain parts of Fulgrim, and it definitely isn't for children to read.
No, it is, and I don't think it is meant for children to read. It is the medium book is a little bit strange on that
Yeah,
because we have very controlled media like film and the internet, visual media, way more controlled, way more checked than books are, because that is a thing that dawned on me really quick when I was getting into reading a lot of book. It was like, okay, so all this sexiness and blood and gore is censored, but if I read it in a book, it's okay as a youth because parents do not really check on it. It's reading a book reading is good. Keep him interested in something. Um,
yeah,
and the cinema in the head is rolling, and yeah, it's a strange medium, especially for a company like GW, who the youngest start in I guess 12, 11ish, around like that, getting into the hobby. I talked to people who got way earlier into the hobby, like around when they were 6 years old, and
yeah.
that really baffled me because I was like, okay, how did your parents react to that? Like, how did that all work out? I might have to get back to that.
I
um
think I think at the same time, I think with what you said with the difference between like the media and books and stuff like that, I think books can be sometimes worse because what you read is what you put in your head.
yes.
Whereas, like, I was going to throw out like games like Call of Duty, and obviously Grand Theft Auto. There's loads of young kids playing them. There's that. Was it a Modern Warfare 2 where one of the missions is you could opt out for doing the mission because it was that bad, because you were just literally you were playing a Russian terrorist shooting civilians in an airport. And I think the problem there, what you said, is parents can obviously tell their kids that's just their game, but when you're reading something that can play on your mind and stay on your mind a lot more than playing a game you can just turn off, and understanding that you can turn it off, kind of thing. So I was really shocked at that certain passage in Fulgrim. Anyone who's read the novels obviously will know what we're going on about. A nice big concert that doesn't end up being a concert. And even I, at the time, I think I was about 21 when I read that, and even I was like, "Wow, okay, this is different."
That's not disturbing at all.
And it was, yeah, it was. But then I think that's kind of what helped me get further into the lore of 30k, and it comes back around to what I said a few minutes ago of the 30k still keeping that real grim, dark feel, and why I said, and why I do think it's sort of targeted to the older generation of Warhammer hobbyists.
Well, now they obviously have a book line for younger children. I have not looked into it. I just know it exists,
Yeah,
which is 40k Adventures or something
that's
like that, or AOS Adventures. They have a line for a Age of Sigmar and 40k, as far as I know. I don't know how good these are, or
which I think is good at the end of the day, because because not many kids are going to want to read the 40k novels that are
yeah,
400, 500.
and parents should not be interested that they jump right into the grittiness of 40k.
Yeah,
And I mean, it will happen over time. I think it is really good to see in the comic book medium, where you have your early Batman, which is way more superhero-ish, catering to younger children. But
yeah.
these children will grow older and they will go for more adult content, may it be out of rebellion or
Oh yeah, definitely.
of if they are growing up, and then there the change will happen from, well, cartoonish, lighthearted to well, angsty, angry, puberty hits. You find yourself in those stories then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different setting and stuff like that. But you've only got to look at the graphic novels of Darth Vader. They are completely not what you see in the films. The Darth Vader in them novels is a Darth Vader that I want to be seen on a big screen. It is not for, but it won't be for children. It will have to be a 15. If they made a film of like the graphic novels and went real deep into the Darth Vader darkness, it would have to be a 15 at least, because he was a complete tyrant. He was a nutcase.
Yeah, we can look forward to. Well, I look forward to. I have to look forward to the animation part of Games Workshop, which they are pouring a lot of resources in. There will be a movie. I'm more interested in the short stories because long time ago we were discussing that at our friendly local gaming store, that there should be a movie. But should there be a movie? Movie does not seem to fit the 40k narrative. A short story approach would fit it more, way better. And that is what they are doing now. The question is, how will it be translated? How will it be available? What will be the age restrictions on these things? A very interesting topic to look forward to. Well, the track record concerning movies when it comes to not very good. Not very good, let's put it that way, yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about Ultramarine.
Yeah, I don't really. It's the a friend of mine bought the super order it get the comic book steel thingy edition, and we watched it all together, and that was the only redemption for the movie, because watching it together you can point out the massive silliness and shortcomings of this movie. And he was the one who just sat there and I spent that money so we can have that amount of fun, but not be blown away by it. We have to wait.
A 40k, not just a 40k, a Warhammer film in general, whether that be, in the old world, Age of Sigmar, 40k, 30k. I think it'll be too much. It'll be too much of a grand story to tell in one film. I think, as you said, like short stories, but I actually think a series, or series is, if that's even a word, should be used.
Yeah, more episodical approach. Game of Thrones showed how you can tell a story.
Because, everyone goes, there should be a heresy film. There's going to be, you need about 30 films.
Yes. You don't want a film. You don't want one film. You really need a series. And I think the medium it's... Go on.
You need the story of how the Emperor, came to be, because obviously he's a perpetual. You're gonna have to understand the race of perpetuals that he comes from, where he come from, how we come into power, how we created the Thunder Warriors, then how we created the Proto Marines, made them into legions, made the Primarchs, what happened to the Primarchs, where they landed, and then the Great Crusade itself, then him finding all the Primarchs, and then the Great Crusade happening even more with the Primarchs at the head of their legions, and then Horus turning, half of the legions turning, then the 7-year-long battle of the heresy, all the way to Terra, the Battle of Terror, and then you'll have to have the scouring. It's too much. It's too much to be in a film, or even a couple of films. You would, like I said, 30 films minimum.
Yeah, to make it work. I mean, there's of course at least one Hollywood executive who can boil that down to 3 hours and put in a love interest for the Emperor.
I mean, it was done with Lord of the Rings, but with the Lord of the Rings, he was able to pinpoint his story onto obviously Frodo's journey from the Shire to Mount Doom, destroying the ring, and it was very easy to do that because it is essentially one story. And when I see people say, Peter Jackson made the Lord of the Rings. There's all this history. It can be done. It can be done, but at the same time, it can't be done for the reasons that I just gave with the heresy. It's too vast, and the problem is you've got all these different factions within the heresy. I'm Warhammer, Age of Sigmar. We'll just throw them into the mix. For them to be an effective film concerning everything included within that storyline,
impossible. the serial approach is the episodic approach is for sure right now the best approach Games Workshop can do if they want the story out. Sometimes a good start would be maybe a grim dark Guardians of the Galaxy, just following a rogue trader around, not very specific what he sees. Just you get some tidbits and then see what the audience reacts most positive to, and then you expand in this direction to reveal the curtain, so to say, on everything. That's not a good idea in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, a series following a group of rogue traders, or just a rogue trader by himself, would be great. And then at the end episode, they could do what they've done in The Mandalorian season 2, in terms of they can then add in, a squad of Space Marines, so to speak, at the end to, be like, oh, okay, bang, and then that's it. That's all you've got. So you haven't had the superhumans running around all the time. You've had the basic humans. I mean, they could even do a Gaunt's Ghost series. Everyone loves Gaunt's Ghost. Personally, I've not read any of the books, I'm ashamed to say, and there'll probably be a lot of hobbyists listening to this wanting to chase me down with pitchforks now.
I don't think so. I think the community we are coming out of is way more forgiving. The Instagram community strikes me as a lot of lovely people so far.
Yes, yeah. The kind of where you brought up the Facebook hobby scene isn't as peaceful, shall we say?
Yeah, that one of the reasons why I started out this podcast, because I was like for a very long time I wanted to start a podcast about something at least, and this community is one of the most supportive and positive I found by far. I started out in the depth of the internet when I was in my teenage years, having a lot of internet teenage drama, which is not pleasant at all. Mm-hmm. And there is people know for themselves what is good about the internet, what is bad about the internet, what is good about certain social media platforms. I, for example, avoid Twitter like the plague, because I think Twitter is not a good medium to communicate. And yeah, that's...
I actually only use Twitter to complain to big companies.
Yeah, it seems to be fairly good for that, or put out dates, or just make short promotions, but don't have an argument there. Don't try to argue why they're to touch the latest hot topic. Why yes or no should there be female Space Marines? Don't discuss that on Twitter. Discuss that with a person you sit next to or have in front to, or you want to have a long discussion, but not shouting 140 character bullet points at each other. That is helping nobody, in my opinion.
Yeah, I unfortunately put my opinion across on the whole female Space Marine thing on Twitter, and I can argue with a lot of people, but I was not prepared for the amount of abuse and name calling. I couldn't even get my point across in the end. I had to, for the first time, I had to back out of an argument, because I was like, I'm not going to get anywhere with this, and it was a lesson learned And I fully agree with what you just said. Never comment on stuff on Twitter now.
Yes, another topic I wanted to talk with you about, which I don't know if it's controversial or not because I don't know as much about it, is something you put out. Where is it? There is it. The Saturnine pattern Terminator armor.
Yeah.
Why? To be clear, I think this armor boils down everything what is wrong with Terminators.
Do you know? I think for a lot of us, like obviously, I didn't get into the hobby till I was well into my teens, so I was long after, the Saturnine armor that came out in Rogue Trader days. But I don't know. There's something about it that just screams 30k because it is 30k, and I just want it. I just want it thrown into the equation and I just think they look tanky. For me, I think they would just fit my fist really well. Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, massive shoulder pads, just feel like I'm completely mixed my words up here. I got this vision of them standing behind a gate or a wall at Terra. The traitors have smashed it down or smashed the gate down, and there's a wedge of Saturnine Terminators just standing there, like I said, hammers, shields, and just kind of just like coming in, and there's this wedge that the traitors kind of like a wave crashing against a massive rock will just have to go around to try and get anywhere with them. I love the look of them, but the problem is there's a lot of companies doing obviously 3D prints, casting their own, calling them whatever, which is obviously they can do it, they can get away with it, but they just don't look right for me. They don't look tactical enough, and I know they're not meant to look tactical, but I kind of like a little bit of tactical look element to my Marines, and there's a couple of people that have made some Saturnine, and one of them is the Forged Temple on Instagram, and he made his own, and they're the best Saturnine concept that I've seen on the internet to date. There's been a couple of others from companies that obviously are casting some up and they've 3D printed, made the mold, and they're casting them now and selling them, and I think they look close, but they just look too derpy for me. But I do love the Saturnine, and I would, if Forge World done them, I'd buy them in a heartbeat.
They do have a very wall-like aesthetic to it. This is a very to be fair, the Terminator armor is also called the Tactical Dreadnought armor, and I think the Saturnine armor really transports that name better than the actual Terminator armor does.
Yeah.
I just put up the stuff Forge Temple did because I'm familiar with her work. Yeah, I can see why you like those. It is very close to the original.
Yeah, and they still have that, like I said, that tactical element to them.
Well, proportions-wise, they are a nightmare.
Yeah, but it's Warhammer. Everything's
yes. I mean, with the new plastic sculpts, it got a little bit better, especially in the Necromunda range, I think, and everything that does not wear a Power or Terminator armor. I mean,
plastic kits have come on leaps and bounds within the last, I reckon, 5 years. I'd say for VGW, their plastic kits are absolutely crisp. I prefer the plastic Mark IV and Mark III as over the Forge Worlds design, mainly because the Forge World designs are a lot smaller because of the resin and they're obviously older sculpts, and it's but the drawback to the plastic Mark 3 and 4 is, there's no real variety at the same time. There's no running legs. There's no pointing arms. There's just not that many variety. But at the same time, when you've got tactical units of 20 men, a lot of people just want to get them done, paint them, bang, they're there on the table kind of thing. Not a lot of people want to do, which I try and tell myself not to do, and convert every single model, whether it's a tactical marine or, a Terminator. I can't help it.
Did you ever have the urge to make them look like the classic Roman emperors, gladiators? Because they have a different weapon equipment to tell a different story, or do yourself, I will never see the end of it if I jump down that well?
In what respect, my Imperial Fist or my World Eaters?
The World Eaters, because they have this gladiatorial background.
I kind of tried to stay away from it as much as I could, because I kind of then thought they would look like white Ultramarines at the same time. But then, with their history, any sergeant that I gave a power sword to, I tried to get as close as I could to a Roman Gladi, to give it that little feel. But as far as it went, I gave him that savage chain axe covered in blood. I'm gonna, run into your squad and start swinging feel to them rather than a Roman look. I mean, I gave some of them cloaks and stuff, but I tried to stay away from that at the same time, because gladiators never wore cloaks or had long hair, because
not a good idea in combat. You don't want your enemy to grab anything that you don't want him to grab, and that is my biggest pet peeve with horns on helmets. Don't do that. Don't give your enemy the opportunity to grab the horn of your helmet and get control of your head. Not a good idea.
Yeah, which is a massive misconception with Vikings. A lot of people think that Vikings ran around with horns on their helmets, but they didn't.
Yeah, that's my people's fault, as far as I know, because Richard Wagner made the very famous Ring of the Nibelungen saga, which is an operette about a very famous German heroic story, and I think it is the first reference to, Vikings or Celtics or Germanic tribes, where he just put the horns on the helmets. And of course it is a dreadful and archaic look, but it is massively unpractical and outright stupid in a combat situation.
Yeah. Like I said, with gladiators, long hair to them was easier for you to, obviously, as you said, grab hold and cut your opponent's throat, which is why they all had short hair or completely bald. Just for that very reason, and that's why they went into the pits literally wearing not a lot again, because as we both said, the less you can grab, the less you've got to obviously engage or be killed by your opponent.
Yeah, and Rob just left me. Are you? Yeah,
sorry.
Just for short, we are getting. Getting close to this talk. 1 hour is not 1 hour is not that long. I just want to make a quick reference to your Instagram story, where something interesting happened, in my opinion, because you dipped your toes again into the pool of public opinion, and you were not happy with what you saw. What did you see?
Oh. You have to elaborate, because there's a lot that I post.
It was the voting between Lord of the Rings characters and Game of Thrones characters who would win.
It was stupid. This whole. I was really annoyed by it, really, because I was like,
I can tell.
From a fan point of view, I love Game of Thrones and I love Lord of the Rings, but I'm also a realist at the same time. They both got rich histories. I would say Lord of the Rings got a much deeper, richer history and lore compared to Game of Thrones. but that's with the amount of books that Lord of the Rings has. And obviously, really, the stories was finished years and years ago. Game of Thrones still hasn't been finished, and obviously nothing else has been elaborated on. With the fall of Valyria, the Targaryens riding dragons, Aegon coming over and conquering Westeros, etc. But it was just Boromir versus Ned Stark. I was like, come on, like that's the most weirdest matchup. All it was because it's Sean Bean, and you got Ned Stark who fought really 2 wars, might have had a few duels in between, learn how to fight, but then you had Boromir, who literally from the time he could really command, he was fighting orcs his entire life. He was Osgiliath's defender. He was the defender of the White Tower. He was a warrior. He was of Númenorian descent, same as Aragorn. Not as strong as obviously as Aragorn, but he was a warrior. And I was just like, these comparisons are stupid, and it just showed how fanboyish people are with their votes. I mean, what was one of them? It was the Unsullied versus the orcs that were in Mordor, led by what's his name? The White Orc from The Hobbit. I always forget his name. Is it Azog?
It should, maybe.
I think it's Azog. If I've got that wrong, I do apologise to anyone listening. But it was him as the leader with the entire orc army that he has in the end of Hobbit, with everything he has as well. So the trolls versus the Unsullied. Now I know the Unsullied are great warriors, and in the books I've found out from someone they're the most skilled warriors in terms of the whole Game of Thrones franchise. But there was only 10,000 of them, but the orcs numbered more than that, tens of thousands, and them orcs were much better. I think they were Morian orcs. So they were bigger, stronger, and I was just like, this is not a fair comparison. And, I think it was, not one of them was Drogon versus Smaug. Come on.
but to get what got out of that, you are now starting a Lord of the Rings army?
I will be starting a Ministry of Army led by Boromir. Not right now, but I'm planning it. But at the same time, I'm holding back on it because I've not lost my interest in the Imperial Fists, and I've still got a lot to add to that army. But my thinking at the same time is to have a Lord of the Rings army. So if I feel I'm getting a little bit burnt out with my fist, I can move on to the Lord of the Rings, paint them for a little bit, and I can come back to the fists with a little bit more enthusiasm rather than just trying to grind them out because I've got a list I want to build to, and etc. So I've got my basic force list done with my fist, HQ, 2 troops. So I've got that as a staple straight away. So everything else I'm adding to my fist now is just what I want to add on, rather than grinding myself out, like I said, to a list or a game legal list.
Not to stay on the topic too long, maybe as a closing plaidoyer, why go from the Sons of Angaron to the Sons of Dorne?
Well, I've always been a massive fan of the Sons of Dorne. I originally, when I was into 40k, I painted a very small Imperial Fist army by hand, which I'll never ever do again. And then I moved on to the Crimson Fist, and I was a Crimson Fist player for about 3 years, and I had quite a massive army. And luckily, in my local gaming community at the time, one of my main opponents was an orc player, so it become to the point where I was, if one of my vets had killed one of his orc knobs and stuff, next week I'd have that same vet, I'd pin an orc head to his hand or something. It
great.
became.
That is real nice. That is, yeah, just to represent the accomplishments of your army on the model itself is a very satisfying thing to do.
Yeah, and he would do the same. He'd add in, onto his his war trucks and his war buggies and stuff like that. He'd end up adding bits of Rhino armor to them, painted in Crimson Fist colours. So we kind of build up this massive narrative with our gaming, and at one stage we had a massive game, and I think he had about 300 models on the boards, and it was just we just did the Last Stand. So I did the Last Stand obviously as a Crimson Fist, and it was just nice. Every week we managed to get a game in with each other, and it was just like I said, we built up this massive narrative. We started making some house rules that represented the Orcs much better, but then the house rules represented the Crimson Fists, who constantly fight against the Orcs, made them much better and made their narrative and their arm and my army and my list much more thematic and narrative. So it was a really fun three years, playing against him on and off throughout the gaming days and nights and stuff we had at the shop.
Yeah, I think that is a very underestimated part of playing Warhammer 40k, or those games in general, that you can make a narrative with someone together, and you're in this together, and you're telling a story together, and it just enriches the experience massively.
Absolutely. And obviously, like I said, earlier, I got into 30k because 40k for me kind of died with 8th. That's another story. I won't bash 8th. I understand. It's probably more popular than it ever been. I know it's 9th edition now, and I've got nothing against it. I personally do not like the rules and how they've gone about things. But again, that's a separate subject.
Yeah, changing of editions is always a reason for upheaval and differing opinions, because change will be made, and people are either happy with it or not happy with it. It is the change of edition, and the reactions to it never changes. Rob, listen, it was a blast listening to you. You opened my eyes to the Sons of Angron. There's a lot I learned today, also on the technical side of painting. I thank you very much. I thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
No problem.
And I don't want to leave this at that, because I just want to give you some last words of a topic that is near and dear to your heart, and that is mental health. If you want to say something about that real quick, that would be real nice.
Yeah, I mean, coming from a personal experience from a family member who tried to take their life, thankfully they didn't succeed, and they're still with us today. It's really easy to fall into the depression pit. So all I'm going to say really is don't bottle up as much as everyone says, oh, you'll be all right and stuff like that. Just talk, because trust me, a lot more people have could commit, men especially, every 45 minutes a man in the UK will kill himself. And that's an astonishing number and figure to understand. And if I can help someone not become a statistic, that's why I push it. And the person in question that I was mentioning earlier who wasn't successful with their attempt was my brother, so it is very close to my heart. And I just don't want to keep, I've had 2 friends as well die by suicide, and it's just it's not nice. A lot of people call it selfish, but at the same time, if that's what the person has left, that's all they've got, then that's all they got. And I don't think it is selfish. It can be prevented, and it can be prevented very easily. And that's what I push more towards. And that's why we say, us as men, we can still be men, but we can still be in touch with our emotions and actually opening up. And it's been a hard lesson for me personally as well to learn. But I've learned over the last couple of months as well, because there's a lot I've kept bottled up inside myself that I haven't come to terms with, which I'm now coming to terms with, and it's given me a lot more, a lot of less pressure and stress in my own head. So talking does help. So I've always said on my Instagram, I'm always open to talk to people. Just don't opt to end it.
Those are great final words for this podcast. Yes, it was great to have you. And
No, thank you for having me.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you for the next episode.
See you, everyone.